that on, Guan? Is that on? So we'll stand up and we'll open the Word, and then we'll say the Lord's Prayer, and then we can relax and enjoy. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Have a seat. So there's that story where Jesus, at the beginning of his ministry, where he comes into Canaan, and they have the wedding, and they run out of wine, and Jesus turns the water into wine, and then the comment at the end is, "Wow, you bring the best out first." And I really do feel whenever we start something with the Lord's Prayer, we're having that very moment. We're taking the waters of our everyday moment, and then something is transforming. I can feel it. It's so visceral inside, saying the Lord's Prayer in that way. So we're looking at the prodigal son, and what a wonderful parable it is. All parables are incredibly deep. This one's going to take us three sessions to get through. And even what you've got in front of you now is really 2 sessions. And normally I manage to fit it onto 1 page, double-sided. This is 3 pages, but we'll only work through the first front and back page. And you'll see I've bolded the first part of the parable. Next year we'll get into the second part of the parable. And this is something a lot of people miss with the prodigal son. I did for many years. It's this last part about the son who stayed behind that's so relevant. If you've ever visited a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or you've heard about people that do, we've all heard that often the person will pour out all their issues to that person, that therapist, and then at the end, whatever they bring up is probably the real issue. And you see here, the Lord does not stop in dealing with the first son. That's where we'll go today, the first son who goes on his journey. He continues to say something very, very significant about that second son, and we'll have to wait till next year to get there. But Renee and I were just talking this morning about it. I just said we're doing the prodigal son, and she said, the teenager parable. The teenager parable. Yes, I see that smile on Guan's face. It's true. It's the teenager parable. And being born again means that you get to be born a little bump, a little infant, excited about God, so innocent, looking to him for everything. But you do get to go through these phases later on in your walk with God where maybe you just need to make your own decisions. I know what's best for me, God, and off we go in our teenager moments. So keep that in your thoughts as we go through this parable. For then drew near unto him all the publicans and sinners for to hear him. This is the third parable in the series. First there's the lost sheep, then there's the lost coin, now there's the lost son. So I've left that out. It starts at verse 1. Sinners and publicans are gathering around. Pharisees also are there, and they say, "This man is receiving sinners and eating with them." So he spoke this parable unto them. He goes through the lost sheep, the lost coin, and now he says this one. A certain man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me." And he divided unto them his living. Not many days after, the younger son gathers all together and took his journey to a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. When he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want. He went and he joined himself to a citizen of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's house have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger. I will arise, I'll go to my father. I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no more worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired servants. And he arose, and he came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him, had compassion, ran and fell on his son's neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no more worthy to be called your son. The father said to his servants, Bring forth best robes, put it on him, put a ring on his hand, shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. So we won't go on with the rest of the parable. Let's just stay there. What's coming up for people at the moment? Is there anything jumping out at you? It might have been a long time since you've heard this. Anything jump out at anyone?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
verse 16, where it says, He will fain filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat. Not that. But no man gave unto him. That's what struck me, that when you're in disorder and dark and even hellish times, the evil spirits don't give you anything to feed on. They're not interested in you. I sort of feel I sort of sense the aloneness of those awful times when we kind of in a time of hell, where we're just left alone. Yeah.
Can I bounce off that here?
Yeah.
This is so good what you say about the evil spirit.
Yeah.
I just want to bounce off that because on the way in, Chris and I were talking about the struggle our children have sometimes.
Yeah.
They look to us for unconditional love, and we're able to give them a measure, but never quite enough. Because only God can ultimately, in the end, fulfill that need that we have. And so no man could feed that person in that state. Even loving, kind Christians or other people, if you're in this bottom state, no one can really meet your needs.
Understand that.
Only the Father.
Yeah.
But it's such a good point, Ian. Evil spirits are certainly not going to give you, they're not going to
No
look
support
back.
or encouragement.
Someone else, what jumped out at?
This might seem strange,
Yes.
but for me it was like the father had hired servants. I'm thinking, I want to have some hired servants. The father had provision,
You want to be a
for
good
his
dad,
kids.
don't you? You want to be a good dad, Chris, so he's going, I need a few hired servants.
Yeah, so that was, I know that was sort of offbeat.
Oh, Renee would agree with that, wouldn't you, Dale? Every mother needs some hired servants. Don't you? You need
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness, washing machine is not a bad hired servant, but sometimes you need a hired servant with skin on too.
Yeah.
Good point. Is something else jumped out at anyone for that reading? No? Here's one that jumped out for me. Here's one that really jumped out for me. I used to really get upset with the prodigal son. I'd read this. Because I would feel for the son who stayed behind. Right? Because this is how I read it. Dad, give me half of your possessions. The other half belongs to big brother. I'm going to go blow all your half possessions. Later on, I'm going to grovel, come back. Not expecting anything, but then I get brought back in again, and we'll take the other half that belongs to the other brother, and we'll cut that later on when you die, and I'll get another double dip.
Yeah.
Now, it's just, I'm being, I'm just saying there's got to be fairness in everything, particularly with inheritance. There's such debates, there are courts to deal with inheritance. But look at this. Let me read this to you. This is how wise the father is. He says here, verse 12, the younger of them said, Father, give to me my portion of goods that falls to me. And he divided unto them his living. I read it and went, oh my gosh. The older son got his inheritance too. He just didn't go out and squander it. So when the son came back and was re-embraced, it wasn't like he was taking anything from the older brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't the older brother got his inheritance. All he wanted was his father's love and acceptance. Isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and how is it if somebody's done something wrong, and someone who hasn't looks down at the mercy on their life and can get a little bit cut up about
Yeah,
that?
that's right. Because I always see it as the oldest, the one who stayed behind. He was very religious. He didn't know he could go out and live life a little. You know what I mean? Like, he actually thought he had... That's why he was so unhappy, because it's like, I'm not fair, he gets to party and I'm here having a miserable time because I don't party. But he saw the other one was partying in wrong ways, but there's a right way to party that can have fun too, in good ways.
Yeah.
You know, healthy ways. But he didn't see that side of his father,
Yes.
that he was allowed to. He was very religious.
It gets even better when we lift it into the spiritual sense too. Because both of these, I don't want to talk about the older son today, but both of these are inside us. There is our creative mind. Wild. Doesn't want to be told by God what to do. And there's our rational mind, natural rational mind. It's not a spiritual rational. There's a big difference. It's our natural rational mind that sits critically in judgment of other people. That's the older son. It's the same brain we use when we write a piece of work, do a bit of writing. You use your creative brain, you get all it written out. And later on you come back and you look at it with your critical brain and go, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It just needs a bit of grammatical correcting and a bit of this and a bit of that. So we have these two facets inside us. And this parable is so rich because sometimes it's a spectrum. Sometimes we're operating out of the wild and sometimes we're operating out of the orderly. And both are not necessarily right. Because when you come up into the spiritual, you find there's a place. There's a place for being creative and there's a place for being rational. But it's different when you're in love. When you're in love, your creative and your rational are very different to these two sons. So let's get stuck into the first son here. Introduction. The first part of this parable is all about the prodigal son and the father's love to let his son go. Boy, that's tough as a parent. And to learn life lessons on his own way. And you might even say to yourself, where were you, God, when I was doing those stupid things? I was letting you go. I needed to let you go. It's right. It's orderly. The advancing soul has learned that success and happiness in life can only come by trusting in the higher power of heavenly revelation. When we attempt to master life in our own strength and wisdom, we are in fact trading the loving oversight of our Creator for the cruel, selfish master of our false ego. I can do this. I don't need God to tell me how to do it. We don't think like that, but we act like that. We get out there and we just go for it. I know better. And God's tapping us on the shoulder and saying, slow down. When we finally come to the end of our pride, the tender mercy of God greets us with newfound freedom and love as opposed to punishment and retribution, isn't it? Too much externalized Christianity has tried to sell us the angry God. And when we come to the end of ourselves and our humility, it's only when we're in pride that God is angry. When we come to the end of ourselves and we come to God in humility, we actually find God is very loving and very merciful. First he lets us go and squander, and then he's just happy to have us back. Isn't that amazing? Your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on that? Oh, Chris, is there something? No?
Because he doesn't even, when the son comes back, he doesn't even remember like what he's done. He's like, I'm not worthy. He doesn't even hear him. It's like, bring the best. He doesn't even hear that. I'm not worthy. It's like, I didn't hear that. Sorry, you are worthy. Let's celebrate.
I just had a really fascinating thought while Chris was talking then. We know what our creative voices are like. We know what our critical voice is like. But do we know that fatherly voice as well? As you say, Chris, when we come out of our selfish moments, can we hear that loving voice that says it's okay?
Yeah.
Or do we immediately slip into the criticizer of why I'm so bad and I shouldn't have done this and what a bad person I am? Evil spirits are really good at...
Yeah. No, and with my own, I've got some, I guess, a bit of revelation on this personally, my own life. Like I remember I got really burnt out on religion. trying to help all these people, and I was like, I just didn't even like people anymore. I didn't want to be around people. I always felt they were expecting things from me. But it was my problem. I was in religion. I was drawing from an empty cup, you know, that runs dry. Not the, you know, the Lord said, out of your flow rivers. So I remember going away, burnt out, complaining to God in the country. You know, what's happening? I'm trying to do all this stuff here, and like the voice that sort of came back was, that's all good and stuff, but I haven't asked you to do that. What do you enjoy? That was like, I was like, what? What do I enjoy? And it's like, I didn't even know what I enjoyed anymore. I was like the older brother who was
Yes.
doing religion.
Yes.
I didn't know. So I got permission from
Yeah.
God. I felt like he said, do stuff you enjoy. Forget all that stuff you're doing. Drop it.
Yeah.
And that was the journey for me going into the wild. And he said, you can do whatever you want. Like Paul said,
Yeah.
all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. So I was free. I had open reign to sin, to do whatever the hell I wanted.
Yeah.
And I did for a season. Then I found, you know what, some of that stuff's not working for me. And love pulled me into line,
Yeah.
not laws.
Yeah.
See the difference? Like,
Well, love is the real law, isn't
that
it?
is it. You
It's
fulfill the
real
law through
it's
love.
the real law of life. It's the real
So that's it. And I think a lot of the older brothers, too scared, think God's going to pound them if they do something wrong. So they never discover in the wilderness who the real love relationship
Yeah.
and the freedom in Christ.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
I think
You-
the father was just happy to have him back.
The father was just happy to have his love back, wasn't he? Have that
What did-
the
yeah,
son,
have
and
the
have that
son
love.
back.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you've been doing, but you've finally seen the light and now you've decided to, you made a choice to come back.
Yes. And heaven's the same, isn't it? Heaven's not looking at who we've been. Heaven is looking at who we're becoming. And this son was becoming a humble, gentle. Look, I'll just serve. I don't need much.
Yeah.
I'm happy just to serve in your house.
Yes.
Nonsense, you're my son. Get the ring.
Yes.
Get the robe. But it's just that heart that God wants. You know,
Yes. That gratefulness. Because I was going through, I mean, you've been through a challenge with my own son, very applicable to this story because he's doing his own thing.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
at the moment, and he's not under anyone's parental, so I've had to let him go.
Yeah.
But I've noticed when I have seen him, there is that humble. He was very rebellious before. It's like I'm doing my stuff. Now it's like, thanks, Dad. And he'll think, thanks, Dad.
Mm.
I'm seeing a humility there. He's still in the wilderness
Mm.
trying to find stuff, but there's been a shift too. He's not coming out of so rebellious. You know what I mean?
And when your son's rocked up on your door for a visit, what have you felt?
Yeah, I've just been like the father. Let's get something to eat. What do you want to do tonight? Let's catch a movie.
Relief.
You know? Yeah.
Some
yeah.
kind of relief. He's here.
Yeah.
He's coming to see me.
Yeah, but it's just wanting to like, let's max this time because I don't know when I'm going to see you next because you're going to do your own thing and I'm not going to stop you. But let's enjoy our time together.
Wow, that's full on.
I can't get over verse 12 where it says, and a young son said to his father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. And he divided them to his living. It's like, and no other parent would do that. We'd all go, no, you wait till I die.
You wait till I die, because it's not wise to give you all this money inheritance right now. Not only will I suffer, but you'll suffer.
I'm just
But-
imagine what would, unless he's just saying, unless this is a parable of his ego, and he's saying, yep, go.
It
see
is.
how your ego
Exactly, that's right,
treats
Renee.
you.
No, that's exactly right. This is, look, parables on their own can have a lot of wisdom in the external world, and then you get to a point where you kind of hit a wall and go, that doesn't line up. But when you get it to its spiritual sense, you go, oh my, there was a wisdom there. When you talk about your ego, right? Your ego. God has to give us a sense of autonomy. He has to leave us in this sense of we are our own master. And yet he's very carefully tweaking everything in the background for us.
So had the older son just not ever seen his ego? Is that the difference?
I think the older son is the critical part of our ego that judges everyone and everything from the ego instead of judging from love. And the younger son is that part of our ego that believes,
They know everything.
well, look, I can handle money better than you, Dad. Give it to me. I'll prove it to you. I'll show you. And then what happens is we get out there and start living it up, not realizing the wisdom it takes to really... Now think about your ego. Swedenborg says in the Spiritual Diaries, without the proprium or the ego, none can be saved. Oh my. Without being born on earth, you can't be born again. I've got to let them. I've got to do this experiment that looks like such a risk. I've got to let them have their own ego and self. and all the costs that could come with that, knowing that that's what's going to produce the celestial man eventually.
Yeah.
That's what's the celestial man will be born from the foolish natural man making all the dumb, stupid experiences.
Because you want, like, as a father, you want, or mother, you want your child to really be with you because they actually want to be with you, not because
That's what you were
putting
saying,
guilt.
Alice. That's what you were
The
saying.
parents putting guilt on them. You've got to be here. And like, no, if they don't want to be there, that's not. You want it for the heart, right?
Yeah.
And that's like God. He said, I want you from the heart. Sorry, I don't want religion pretending you want to be here and you don't really want to.
Yeah. We were talking about that. And what I bring out of that is the fact we've been given free will.
Oh,
Yes.
what a gift!
Free.
Yes.
So this is your life, you do it, and that's what that's what's jumping out at me,
Yeah.
is free will.
Yes.
And then he came back out of love and appreciation
yes.
for his father. So
Yes.
by going out into the wilderness, and Christ did it, the Pharisees put Christ up on him because he was man, he did things, not religion, and that's where you've got the religion, and so the free will is
Well,
giving you to. Yeah.
I'm glad you bring that point up because you're making my mind click over and go, look at that first verse. I put it in there. I could have left the first and second verse out. Look at it again. For then drew near unto him all the publicans and sinners, for they were hungry to hear him, for they are the first son. But the second son pulled back and said, who is this sinner who thinks he's the Messiah? The Messiah would have come and acknowledged what good people we are and what bad people they are. You know, the Messiah wouldn't be having a party with them. Oh, yes, he will. And he tells the prodigal son story. Where's your heart at, Pharisee? Your heart's stuck in the critical older son.
Right.
So they're all here, aren't they? All the ingredients. And we all have the Pharisee inside us, and we all have the wild teenager inside us. But we also have the Father inside us. Oh, let him be the voice that I listen to daily.
Yeah.
You know, that he's such mercy. I love the way even while the son was far off, the Father rushed to meet him. Now, God waits for us to approach him. But the moment he sees that affection turning towards him, he's there, rushing at us.
Yeah.
Isn't it? That's beautiful.
And I think it's a good indicator too where we're at with our relationship with God. If we find ourselves being critical of others and judging them and sin, you can be sure that you don't actually know the Father's love properly.
Nope, that's true.
You are the older brother.
Well, thank God the parable doesn't finish because he gives us some advice for that part of ourselves, Chris. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, because like when you, as Jesus said, when you've been forgiven much, you love much. So when you know the Father's love towards you, it's like you've been in the wilderness. You know you're a sinner. It's like the love is still there. You just love others like similar. You don't judge them. It's like we're all sinners.
When you say that those who are forgiven much love much, what I think of is, I kind of paraphrase that to say, those that figured out, those who have figured out how much they really have been forgiven for, are able to love God freely. Those who haven't figured it out yet and still think they're sitting pretty and doing all right, have very little love for God, isn't it?
That's right.
We've
Or
all
others,
got,
or others. They're always
we've all got a
critical.
lot that we need forgiveness for, isn't it? Really. And that's where that love. Yeah, God's not looking at what I've done. He's looking at who I'm becoming. Who I'm becoming. All right, so Renee, would you read a certain man had two sons in the bit underneath?
Oh,
A certain man.
oh, down here. A certain man had two sons, the Lord guiding our natural and spiritual mind understanding. The natural mind, the older son, here is best symbolized by the religious leaders who saw themselves as right with God and thus superior to the average sinner. And yet our natural mind, symbolized by the older son, will always judge from a spiritually uninformed place. In many ways, moral life is sufficient for those who have a nominal belief in the Lord but lack the depth of inner revelation and regeneration. The Lord makes provision for such broken judgment. His wisdom, however, is such that he seeks to bring the advancing soul on a journey wherein the heart's motives and intentions become more important than merely an external action. The reason why this journey is so important is that only when we arrive at the spiritually minded son can we truly
Yes,
know
I
the
think so.
heart of the Lord.
Can we truly know the heart of the Lord? So who, you know, halfway through this parable, who's the one who's figured the father out?
Who what?
Out of the two sons, who is the one who's figured the father out?
The younger one?
Yeah, it's true. You know, so it's like you're saying, Chris, those who've sinned much and been forgiven much are able to know God's love and forgiveness and reciprocate that, isn't it? Yeah. So even when we're religious and we're kind of judging and all these things, God still makes a way for us. You know, we'll see that when we get to the end of the parable next year. God makes a way even for the religious. Isn't that incredible? You know, the younger son doesn't come along and say, "Oh, I'm so humble now. Just make me a servant." No, give him a ring, give him a cloak. Restore him to be my son, and then turn around and look at his brother and go, "You judgmental pig." It doesn't do that. He just says, "Hey, we're all undeserving of the Father's love, all of us." You know. And I know myself, people who are stuck in religious thinking and judgmentalism, God still loves them, and I have no right to think less of them because they haven't gone and made all the mistakes I have, humbled myself, and found God's forgiveness. Do you know what I'm saying? Like we never want to lose our trials. We never want to lose the benefit of all the mistakes we've made, which really just tell us how much God loves us. You don't want to lose that. You don't want to go through all that and then suddenly one day wake up and realise you've got this religious stinking thinking of judging other people. It's very hard to really. But people do live terrible, sinful lives, come to the Lord, and then end up with this thinking that they're somehow superior.
Yeah.
You've forgotten who you were.
It's like that. I don't know if anyone knows Kanye West. He's like a big
Yeah.
singer,
Yeah.
and he's recently come to the Lord. And I was like so excited. I was like letting everyone know, and I could see two different reactions. Some people were like, "This is fantastic," and other people were like, "Oh man, he's faking it." You know, like he's just into good for his music to sell more. And they were just so critical and so judgmental. Like, and now his wife, like, what's that? The Kardashian lady. She's like the big. All the women follow her. You know, I don't know. You guys probably don't, but.
And now she's doing ads with Magnus.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
But she's actually come out recently and said, like her husband said, he said, look, in an interview, he said, look, I'm not really comfortable with some of the clothes she wears. You know, because she like, you know, walk around bare buttonless. But you know, but she in an interview said, look, I've had an awakening lately, and I think I'm going to dress more conservative. Said, look, like my husband has shared with me, he's not really happy with, but he's great. He lets me do what I want. He let me know, but then he doesn't try to control me. But I just thought, you know, I think that phase of my life's over. And she was actually baptized recently, and yet she got these two people, the most unlikely people. They're like, and yet God is just pouring on the love on them, and some people can't handle it. The religious people can't handle it. It's like, how can you go from being that to this now? And no, I don't believe you. You know what I mean?
Yes. So Chris, it is what it's about, but you know,
Happy to have new converts.
Yeah.
look,
But some people can't handle it because they've been the prodigal. They've been lived this prim and proper life, and they haven't gone out in the wilderness, and they're like, it's not fair.
but this is the problem with this thinking, isn't it? But let's just read that again just quickly. Just go back to page 1. At the bottom there, where I go, this is the second sentence, our natural mind, symbolised by the older son, will always judge from a spiritually uninformed place. And go back of a sentence. The moral natural mind is here best symbolised by religious leaders who saw themselves as right with God. So they embraced an ideology, a religious view, where they're right with God and everybody else is wrong. Isn't it? That's the danger of the natural mind. The spiritual minded sees all things and knows that God is the doer and that we are simply participators in his larger, unfolding story. And we really have no power or control. We don't. And so, even when I've made terrible mistakes in my life, I was under the influence of dark forces. And when I've made good choices in my life, I was under the influence of good forces. Therefore, I should stop condemning myself for the bad, understand the process and work with the Lord and let the good in, taking no credit for it, not trying to get brownie points or earn merit. Just go with the process and let God's love rule in my life. And stop worrying about the past. Paul said it this way, forget what lay behind and press towards the high calling.
Yeah.
Press towards the high calling.
Yeah.
Which is about me really helping you find the path of light and love. Not to look good, not for a merit or heaven, or just because it's right. It's right that I help each person find the path of light and love.
Yeah.
And do the same for myself. Yeah. Okay, so jump into the next. Would you mind reading a little bit there for us, Alison? Is that okay?
Yeah,
A paragraph? You can say no.
No, where?
The next one. Read a couple of them. The younger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The younger of them said to his father, immature states conception of the world seeking to grow. Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided them unto them his living, the pride of life, and the belief that one is superior to others, the false ego, taking ownership. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together the call of unrest, seeking resolution and growth, took his journey into a far country, questing for light answers and callings. There is a saying, author unknown, God seems far away, who is it that has moved? The Lord never moves away from his children, nor does he turn his gaze elsewhere. He does permit us, though, to turn away from him and dwell at a distance. Even in this, goodwill eventually comes for the advancing soul.
So our thoughts on that?
Well, I keep thinking it's the whole free will, the whole free will.
The whole free will.
That he wants us willingly to be here.
Yeah.
It's profound, isn't it?
Rather than
profound.
have a whole heap of people just be here because they're pew warming, to be here because you really want to be here.
Yeah.
And I think for all of us on the planet, we struggle with that because there's so many distractions. But again, we've got free will as to what we do on a Sunday.
On any moment,
On
moment,
any
yeah,
moment, yeah.
yeah.
And that's the beauty, is that he's given us that. He doesn't want us just to be sheep and just follow mindlessly.
Yeah.
He could have made us that way, couldn't he?
Yeah,
He could
that's
have
it.
created us to just obey.
Exactly.
A lot of people think angels are like that. You know, angels just do as they're told, which is okay. We won't go into that subject. But there is this idea, this incredible idea of what really is free will all about. It's about God saying, "I will not dominate you.
Yeah.
I love you, and I want you to return my love because you want to, not because I insist on it."
Yeah.
It's profound, isn't it?
It is. Like, I found myself, like, in a couple of situations where a couple of guys have been sort of, they've had their mindset on just going and basically sinning, like the Bible class sins, you know, sleeping around and stuff. And like, the latest one, the first one I said, you know what, I think you just need to go sin some more. Like, and that, I would have never said that before. But it's sort of like the father going, you know what, here's the inheritance, do what you're going to do. But when you realise that's not where it's at, the healthy life is here waiting for you, where you're really going to be happy to fulfill. So it seems
Come and talk to
counterintuitive.
me when you're ready.
You know, it seems like, why aren't you giving advice, go and your blessing? Like, but it's not like that. It's just like, the latest one, this guy was, and I knew it was no use. It was a waste of my time trying to talk to him. And I just said, you know what? These are the things that these are some things, some healthy things. There's all this stuff. I mean, just basic practical stuff that's out there. That, you know, it's venereal disease, all sorts of things. Just these are the things. If I didn't say this stuff to you, I think it would be wrong. So, but at the same time, when you go do your thing, whatever, and you realise that's not where it's at, there's a better path. You know what I mean? And but there was no judgment on my part, and I think that was sort of some of the father's heart coming through, not trying to talk them out of it because it was pointless. It was absolutely pointless, waste of my time. But I had to sort of educate and then go. But when you realise it's not where it's at, here's the path of life.
And this is the answer to the angry God, you know, why is evil in the world, and all that sort of stuff. because there's God's love and there's God's acts. And God's acts are based on his love, but he's also considering our free will.
But even trying to protect us in that, I was trying to protect
He's trying to protect us in
And I was
absolutely.
saying, and when you join to someone else, you're getting all you can get their baggage. It's just not a physical act. So I was giving them the rundown of stuff they mightn't have been aware of.
Sure.
Like, trying to protect them still in that state,
Yes.
with some of the stuff that could happen.
Yes.
And they could be taken advantage of and, blah, blah, blah. And I think God he's there with us going, you know what, he just wants to be with us wherever we're at, like giving us advice and all that,
So this parable's really saying to us, there's such wisdom in this, God that disappears and leaves us to make our choices. He's there and behind the scenes, carefully trying to help us. But this is the wisdom of God, that he backs off and says, I let you have your life
Exactly.
in the hope of the heart. Because the
Yes.
alternative is, you're staying here, son.
Yeah, you're not allowed
You're
to.
staying here.
Yeah.
And what's that going to get you? That's going to get you more of that resentment,
Exactly.
that criticism,
And
that
I know,
hate.
and I know with this particular guy, it's like wet paint. You're not allowed to touch it, so he wants to touch it. and then Paul said,
Non-conformist.
But Paul the Apostle said that. He said, when I knew the law, the desire sprang up, and I found myself breaking the law. So
Yes.
sometimes you need to touch and realise, oh, yuck.
That's right.
It's not all,
Yeah. You need to act out of the ego. You do. You need to see what that gets you and learn.
Yeah.
The problem for me, I suppose, is all those people that have become, they're just tormented by their egos. But, if they can find the Lord and the light, they'll get healing in that. But let's keep going. This is good stuff.
Before you go,
Yes.
I just thought that what you said about giving permission, okay, go and do it, is an element of that with God and war and crime and the disorders in the world. If you're going to do it, then I'm going to have to let you do it. Because it's the only way you're going to face up to the fact that you've got the yearnings and capabilities of doing it. Okay, sorry.
And no, Ian, that's beautiful, because that really highlights how we, in our own ego, can come to the end of ourselves and go, this is the horrors of what self does.
Yes, that's right.
Exactly.
This is the horrors of who would want that? But until you...
Can't be told.
No, we can't be told. We've got to be shown.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, we've got to learn our lessons.
Yes.
What's that famous line out of The Matrix? You can't be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it. You have to see it for yourself. Wow, that's good. Do you want to, Bev, read the next bit?
You have to, and they're wasted his substance with riotous living.
Yep.
The excitation and lights of selfish evils. And when he had spent all, the casting away of all wisdom, restraint, and godly inhibitions. By the truth, and sell it not. Also wisdom and instruction and understanding. Proverbs 23:23. There arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want, which is evil and selfish states, now producing the fruit of destruction.
Right, now see, this explains the angry God. God is kind of saying, look, don't break this commandment or I will punish you. That's like me saying, you're going to keep playing with that ball on the road, that semi-trailer is going to knock you into kingdom come, okay? It's going to smash you. Now, the truck doesn't have any real intent to want to smash someone into kingdom come, but you talk to a child like that because you want them to realise the dangers. And so God's saying here, don't break these commandments or I'll punish you. And the spiritual sense is, look, I've created the system of freedom. When you choose and you choose evil, evil has its own life. It starts as a seed, it grows into a plant, and it grows into the full tree, and then the fruit is death. And you're going to eat that. So that's God's, there's this angry God. But really what's going on is our mind being the garden, in comes the seeds of evil and selfishness, and they take full fruit. There arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want. Selfishness always leads to the famine and the want. Never being satisfied in
Be
yourself.
satisfied.
No.
You don't get enough of it.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. All right, so Chris, you want to keep reading from there?
Which one's that?
And he went, I think we're up to.
And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, mixing goodness with evil and truth with lies.
Now hang on, Chris. Because you talked about your mate and saying, oh, well, if that's what you want, maybe you just need to go and sin a bit more.
It's like he had to get out of his system. And the other guy that was with me next to me said, Chris, I think you're onto something. He needs to get it out of his system. And he's not even like a Christian, you know, like, he needs to get this damn thing out of his system.
Sure. But, no, I agree with you. But see, when you pull away the veneer of the world of appearances, he's wanting to score with a chick or whatever you vulgar
Yeah.
way you want to look at it. You pull away the veneer, God built the desire in there to drive for us for intimacy
Mhm.
and connection.
Yes.
That's what's really pushing him, but it's taking surface in his mind through these evil, selfish forms.
Mm.
When you get past that, you see, what does he do? He goes and joins himself to a citizen of that land.
Mm.
In the end, the answer was going and rejoining himself to the Father.
Mm.
Everything we need and want is in us. The answer.
Yeah.
When we join with the Father of
Yes.
lights.
That's right, because my advice to him that was coming through, I felt it was the Lord was like saying, look, you can waste your time doing all that and stuff, or you can find your purpose, join groups with people like mine, and you're going to probably find someone, a female, who is on the same page as you. So put the first things first, and you'll just automatically find someone similar.
Now, there's a scripture for that. What does it go on?
Seek the kingdom of God first,
Seek first the kingdom of God.
and everything will be added.
Then-
Yeah, rather than wasting time doing this and all this other
That's
stuff,
right.
you know.
Seeking the other stuff first. When God brings blessings and wealth and no sorrow with it.
Hmm.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep reading.
Okay, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine, that is enslavement to lowest, most sensual forms of evil and selfish desires.
Okay, so you find your mind is now in want. There's a famine. You're not satisfied. You're driven. You join yourself to these things that you think are going to make you happy. Alcohol, gambling, whatever it is. I mean, there's a whole list. You know the list.
Hmm.
That then drives you further down into sensual states where you're even more wanting. So get a bit more.
And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. That is dissatisfaction and spiritual hunger from feelings on selfish states.
Feeding on selfish states.
Feeding, yeah.
Oh, one more.
And when he came to himself, that is first states of spiritual awakening. In the Greek, the words hinton de elthon, himself, however, having come, translated literally means to come into a right mind. In truth, when we attempt to live this life without the help and support of our Creator, we are in fact operating out of a form of mental and spiritual insanity. However, when we follow our soul drive to connect to our Heavenly Father and draw on His strength, we are returning to our right mind and the heavenly order.
How many of those moments have I had where I come to my right mind and go, oh, I've been resentful for the last 2 days. Instead of letting the Lord bring His powerful forgiveness in me and let it go. Broken 2. That's not a pitch. But you know, I was being ice queen, or I was being this, or I was being that. I was holding on to whatever it was I was holding on to. And then I came to my right mind and said, what am I doing? This is suffering. I give it to the Lord, and His answer fills my soul, and I'm able to forgive, or reevaluate, or stop condemning, all of those sort of processes. Grant, what do you think? Come into your right mind.
I'm thinking something in a dilemma. The situation, I'm thinking the situation of the new church. Where are we? Who are we? We read the Swedenborg's writing saying that this is the end of the old church. Okay? Can I understand this statement as we are better than old church?
Ooh, yes. Yeah, wow.
Can we see that?
I think that would be the older son talking. That would be- but God in His mercy has provided for us a way back. Coming back to the Father is coming back to the Word and finding its spiritual messages, which we were externalizing and judging each other with, and now we go to the deeper heart of the spiritual messages and we find a feast. We find the fatted calf and we find the joy. And it's not that we're superior, but we go, oh, I have been missing this for so long. I now want to try and find a way to share this with other people. I live in daily bliss with the Lord. Do I suffer? Yes, I do, like anyone else.
Mm.
But when I'm not in self, I'm in bliss with God. I want others to know that. It's not something I'm doing.
Mm.
I'm not superior. I'm not better. It's available for all of us. But what we need to do is humble ourselves and engage in the process. Let the word sow its power into our mind naturally, and then it breaks open in a spiritual sense, and we find this feast going on in the Lord.
Mm.
So it's not that we're superior in any way, Blan, but we've made the mistakes of being this, thinking that this is the way and that's the way and that's the way. Then we found the spiritual sense and gone, I'm no longer in famine. I'm no longer in want. I'm getting my soul fed, and I'm having a deeper relationship with the Lord. Can I share that with you? Get away from me, you sinful devil, whatever your form of Christianity. I don't want it. Okay, sorry.
Mm.
You know, is that a little better?
This leads to another question. We say we are not in the family, which means we know the truth deeper, because Swedenborg brought this truth,
Treasures.
this
yeah.
very valuable information from heaven.
Yes.
We know the deeper truths.
Yes.
So, because we have these deeper truths, are we better than the fundamental Christian?
We're better off, but
But-
we're all sinners being saved by the love and grace of God.
But I have heard someone criticizing, you new church people are not better than us. I have heard this several years ago.
One,
It's a
one-
good preacher.
one, that person.
This caused me to think this very,
Sure.
very seriously.
Yeah.
If we say we know the truth, true truth, but
Yes.
we are not better in behavior or in our mind than the other people, so what is the value of the new church?
It's the inner feast. It's that you're having the relationship with the Father instead of being joined to the citizen of another country and being in famine and nobody giving a whoop about it.
And I think too, it's very
Good question.
insightful what I'm saying, because if you do have something better, like for instance when I was trying to give that advice to those guys, I did feel I had a better, healthier, like a doctor has a healthier way.
Yes.
But it comes down to, do I think I'm better and you're scum,
No.
and I look down on you? That's, and I think the gauge to know where you're at, again with, Jesus said, you'll know my disciples by the doctrine?
Yes.
No. By the love they have.
Yes.
So everything, if you want to, you have to look at the fruit. What is the fruit?
Yes.
And if someone says they're better and the fruit is arrogance, looking down, then you've missed the plot.
Yes.
You might think you got better theology, but you are not walking in the love of God.
No.
You're missing it.
I keep coming back to this, and I'm going to keep doing it, I suppose. I keep coming back to this. Genesis chapter 1. And God separated the waters from above from the waters below. Right? When you're in a spiritual state, you've got nothing to do with those lower waters. There's a space between you. Those lower waters think, I'm better than you. That's youism. That's ego. That's self. When you separate the waters from below from the waters above, you're operating in a different order. It's not the filthy waters in the ponds down below. It's a different order. When you're in that higher spiritual state, you're thinking, I love you. I want to make your life better. I don't want to love you by giving you your selfish wants. I want to love you by bringing you into a deeper relationship with your true self, with the Lord, and your calling in life. So it's just such opposite. There's this space in between. And that space in between gives you the ability to look, to observe what they're doing, not judge, not think I'm superior, but think, wow, you're still on that journey. I hope you get this soon, because there's a lot of suffering at the end of that road.
Yeah.
And when you're ready, I'll show you how I'm doing it. And not that I'm better, it's just that God's giving me the strength to not make those decisions that are going to cause you a lot of pain. Does that help one? Now here's the other thing. Whoever said to you, you new church people think you're better, that person, and I'm not judging, that person is projecting. They're projecting. And they can only project what they see. So they themselves must be struggling with internal thoughts of superiority, and so you're being a mirror. In fact, this is part of consciousness. Every person is a mirror for our own soul to some degree. So that person was learning about superiority and how ugly it is from Juan, but I don't think you were operating in superiority at all, Juan. I think you were just showing a bit of light, and they were going, oh, this superiority stuff, I don't like that. Not realizing that it was perhaps in them that the Lord was wanting to deal with it.
This story happened in one of our study groups.
Okay.
Currently, there was 97 people.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
I was invited to this group only 2 weeks ago.
Right.
People are there. People there are arguing every day.
Yes.
So which makes us unhappy.
Yeah.
But the other people think, oh, all these group of people are the new church people.
Oh.
If you are arguing, if you are talking,
yes.
people will be very upset. Oh, new church people like this.
Yes. Here's a proverb for you.
So I'm thinking this is really a
Judgment.
oh my judgment. Yeah. Oh my.
Can you make an excuse and say you got
or something?
to be
It's
somewhere?
really-
Here's a proverb, right? Where there is no oxen, the stable is clean. Okay, so it's a bit ugly, there's a bit of arguing, there's a lot of stuff going on, but at least there's activity, at least there's energy, at least there's work, spiritual work going on of some form. You know, I mean, it'd be so easy for all of us to run away to our monasteries and stay away from the ugly world and the judgmental Christians and the judgmental them and the this, them, but at least, you know, someone criticised me of my book being too New Age. Well, I'm sorry if you find it that way, but they're people who need to know the Lord. And I'm writing it in a way that they will appreciate and understand. And that's just how it is sometimes.
Yet I bought your book,
Yes.
I read it, I gave it to a friend, she's read it, that book is doing circles now.
Wonderful.
That's
That is so
moving
good.
on, which is what you wanted.
That's what I
So
want, that's what
I
I-
think, one of the verses I don't remember exactly where it's from, but often we have to sow where we've been planted. Which
that's
is
beautiful.
about not going up onto the mountain. Like, obviously, God wants you there for a reason. He hasn't shown it to you yet.
Mm.
But maybe there is some, often it's walking our talk, not just talking it. So maybe it's more peaceful serenity that you're going to bring into that group and it'll be revealed to you. Because that's why we're all planted in our different places. This gentleman with the men. And how many times does a child fall over before they learn to walk?
200, two,
Oh, that was a rhetorical.
2,400 steps.
Exactly.
2,400 steps an hour. 2,400 steps an hour, and it's something like 17 falls in an hour as well.
I suppose I asked the wrong person.
No.
I was
But,
the kids.
but it's incredible, the drive.
Yeah.
No, I was just looking at this
The ego.
the other day. It's that drive. I'm fascinated by the drive of children to walk because it's our drive to walk spiritually. You know?
Yeah.
I love a truly born of the spirit person because they don't give up.
No, well, so that's
They
the
don't
settlement
give up.
over here, isn't it?
It is.
That's why it's been, while we've all been put, where we've met all of us,
Yes.
and I think that's why we've been allowed free will.
Yes.
Because, and I think when you were talking about Kanye's, like different Muhammad Ali, sometimes you can only reach someone. You may be born again, and they go, oh, you don't know, how would you know about drugs, or how would you know about this? Because they may see you in faith, but not realise that you've walked that walk as well.
Yes. Well
And then they
said.
go, oh, well, you know, like the 12-step programs, and all the different programs that are out and about, so different people are in them, because that's where they've been planted.
And that's their next step.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't rush ahead. They should just take that next
Yeah,
step.
yeah.
That's so beautifully said. Let's just take a note of where we're up to. How I think we got to, he came to the end of himself. That's a great place. You know, coming into your right mind. That's a great place to stop. We'll take up there next year. But before we finish, jump over to the spiritual focus. So you've got that to at least work with. Spiritual focus. Pick one thing about your journey and meditate on the Lord's mercy displayed towards you over the next few days or weeks. Very last page there. Yeah? So just think about something in your journey where God has shown you wonderful mercy, and just meditate on that. And I'll give an example. Humility is a result of realizing that I am not in control, but God, my Father, has a plan for my life. So you find something in your life where you've just gone, gee, God has been so merciful to me in that, and just meditate on that. That's how we stay in the right mind. You stay in the right mind. Yeah, we'll leave it there, and we'll go through the study next year, part 2 of that. Now let's pray. And have a nice cup of tea. Lord, I am so wonderfully grateful that we don't have to walk this walk alone. That, Lord, there are your people out there in all kinds of experiences. You brought them into the light. And they're people that we can fellowship with and enjoy. And we don't look down on the world. We just wish and long for people who are in darkness to know your warmth and your light and your love. Truly, Lord, you love us with an undying, unsearchable love. And we are grateful for all that you do. In your name, Jesus.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a really good that's the first part. Stick it in there. Excellent. Now let's have a cup of tea.
So, see, it's different, I think, also with the God lets us go as prodigal sons, because we go,
Dad,
he goes, well, that's okay, because I have divine
I just
providence
blew
taking care
kisses.
of everything. I've got angels everywhere watching you all and
Dad,
helping
do
you all
it.
and sorting you out.
As a parent, you've got